Good afternoon to everybody and happy Women's Day. We're here today with one of our debate, FSR debate, the ones that we're holding on Wednesday almost every week. And today we're looking at a topic related to gas, the outlook for gas market in Europe between two crucial winters. So without further ado, I immediately pass the screen to Ilaria Conti, who will introduce the debate.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy International Women's Day also from my side. I'm very pleased to present this online debate, not only because, as you can see, we managed to fulfill our dream of having 100% female speakers today, but also because our speakers today are the real experts on the topic that we are going to discuss about, and it's not an easy one. As we know, the energy crisis the energy crisis first and the invasion of Ukraine from Russia last year had dramatic consequences at all levels and also had a big impact on European gas markets. Europe responded to these the dramatic threats, to these very dramatic developments with a number of initiatives at European level, also at member states level, addressing the emergency at first, but also more, let's say, medium to long-term measures that had the scope to safeguard security of supply for the winter ahead, last winter, and also at the same time not forgetting the decarbonization targets that Europe has. So a very, very difficult dilemma or trilemma even that has led us to today, until today. Today we can say it's almost spring, although I hear that in Brussels that it has started snowing right this morning. But I think today is the right moment to make an assessment of what last winter was like and what if the measures that were taken were actually effective, and how well are we prepared for the winter ahead. So we have a few months to get prepared, and I'm really pleased. I look forward to hearing what our speakers will tell us on this topic. So we will start with Sylvia Beyer from the International Energy Agency, where she's a senior energy policy analyst. And her intervention will be followed by Monica Sigri from the European Commission. She's head of unit for global demand and international negotiations. So really the right person at the right place, if I may say so. Thank you very much to both of you. The second part of the debate will be moderated by my colleague Alberto Potočnik, and he will introduce the other speakers later. Thank you very much. Enjoy the debate. Sylvia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ilaria, and good to see you all. And indeed, thank you very much for inviting the IEA to this distinguished panel. I hope you can hear me well, and lovely to see so many former colleagues, friends here together. So thank you to the Florence School of Regulation. I will say hello from the IEA and the teams here. We're working very closely with all of you in this difficult time. The IEA advice in the past months has indeed focused on implementing what was decided by the leaders of the EU in Versailles, really quickly reducing the dependence on Russian gas and Russian energy supplies. And through that Repower EU plan, we've been working closely with the European Commission, with DG Energy, Monica and colleagues, the platform, DG Reform. We released the results of the analysis a couple of days in February, in fact, in Brussels. And I shall report to you some of the good news and also indeed some of the vigilance that is needed for the next winter. So between the two winters, it's indeed a timely panel to have. The IEA also created a task force. I think these days most institutions will have a gas task force. We do have one as well to look at the sort of global market trends, monitor the market, discuss supply security. The task force has met on a monthly basis, so it was a busy time here as well. We had a gas ministerial, I will come to that. But on the overall, 1 year after the war and what happened with the EU and its overall ambition to really get down on dependence on Russia, we can say that in 2022, the share of Russia in EU gas demand fell from 40%, where it was before the invasion, to below 10% by the end of 2022. So that is a remarkable trend to note. And that was actually enabled by a 41% increase in solar and wind additions, 40% increase in the sales of heat pumps, and a 15% increase in the sales of electric vehicles. All in all, that has the EU also enabled to decrease the CO2 emissions. They were reduced by 2.5%. So this is all really encouraging news. And however, the IEA has said this a number of times. It's definitely time to remain vigilant and prepare for the coming years, coming months for sure, and indeed longer term as well. So when we, and this was the topic of my intervention, mostly when we look at the gas demand supply outlook for 2023-2024, we can say that there is a part of demand that is basically lower than what we expected, but we also have a very tight supply situation. So the global gas market is basically global because any changes on the European side in the Chinese demand, they will have immediate impacts everywhere else. And this sort of very short-term market, the LNG market, is largely really covered by spot dynamics and spot trade. Particularly Asia relies a lot on spot trade. So anything that happens in Europe and the other way around, anything that happens in Asia has immediate repercussions on other markets. So what happened really since 1 year ago is that the global energy market has really become a market in crisis. Big impact on Europe, large repercussions across the globe, not only on the gas sector, of course. We won't talk about the oil and electricity markets, but of course we all know this has been quite a ride for all the markets. So we expect Russian pipe gas flows to decline by 80% in 2023 compared to 2021. So the decline in Russian gas supplies is really very remarkable on the pipeline side because Russia is losing the European market. And many experts would say that there is basically no return. Those missing volumes have been replaced by global gas spot markets, notably in Asia. So we have really taken a lot of spot trade away from Asia here in Europe and China and Southeast Asia. That other result on the pricing side, seen market volatility all over the place with price spikes in the EU going in August on the TTF months ahead to reach 350 euros per megawatt hour. That was sort of the top mark end of August last year. Now, when we look into the balance, that the outlook, there is a lot of uncertainty, which makes preparedness even more important. We have recently just performed a new outlook in our gas quarterly update, and also for the IEA Gas Ministerial on the 15th of February, we looked at the sort of supply-demand outlook, and we took a scenario that assumes there is really a lot of bad news. So we have assumed a very stringent stress case, and so let me just give you a few pointers on where we see global demand, global supply, and what is then the sort of stress case test. On the demand side, China seems to be the great unknown for many things, economic growth, particularly also for the gas demand. We do expect further declines, but in general, there is a limited rebound. But really, Asia is not growing very, very fast. We see even some gas consumption declines in China, first time since 1982. There is, on the whole, North America is not going to grow, declining by 2% in 2023, lower gas use and power sector, and an uneven recovery in Asia, really, with modest 3% growth around the area. So in a nutshell, the stress that comes from Asian demand is not as high as we had before or in the 2021. But of course, the European gas demand will be still there. We expect 180 BCM of LNG in 2023. That demand for 180 BCM will be basically driving the supply around the globe. The global LNG or global gas supply overall remains tight. We're just seeing a small increase in 2023 for a global LNG supply of 23 BCM. It's the lowest growth in recent years, and in fact cannot really offset the decline in Russian pipe gas deliveries. So we haven't seen the much hoped for FIDs wave in the LNG area, so we have only a few additional LNG supplies, but we don't have a big new upswing on the LNG liquefaction capacity. So we expect some US natural gas production to grow, but on the whole, the experts remain solid, so it will be continuously US LNG that is also helping the European gas demand to be covered. So what we prepared for next winter, indeed, on February 15th, the IEA Gas Ministerial gathered 40 ministers from the IEA countries, and also we invited Bulgaria, Croatia, Georgia, Latvia, Moldova, Romania, Slovenia, and Ukraine, the European Union as well, with the European Commission. And discussion was really around what is the worst case scenario for the next winter and how can we be prepared, assuming that we have a full interruption of Russian gas imports, so fast recovery of Chinese energy demand, notably LNG demand. So if by any means we have a hard winter, no Russian gas imports, and a full China back on, what would it mean for the European supply gap? We calculated that here at the IEA, we see a 40 BCM gap. As you recall, we did that calculation in 2022 already. We had a 57 BCM gap. So that was what we calculated last year. And in fact, it's a bit lower, the gap, because clearly the gas demand, the winter was much milder, gas demand was lower than expected. But even in such a stress case scenario, we have to deal with the 40 BCM gap, which means we need to somehow work, as we said before, and be in better shape and prepared for the next winter, because that could be still a real test case. So on the IEA side, the ministers agreed that we would look at the structural reduction of the demand. So really how to structurally change the gas demand in Europe, and that is, the known measures between bringing new solar, new wind generation on, heat pumps, behavioral changes, but also having non-EU members in the neighborhood contributing with lower demand of gas. Second big part is then the entire question of, can we optimize the infrastructure that transports gas in Europe today to the new flows, because we have new LNG terminals, a lot of new flows. The third part around solidarity measures, particularly focusing on the eastern neighborhood, so Moldova, Ukraine, what can be done next winter to enable them to meet gas demand. And on the IEA side, of course, we are really supporting the conversation between the international like-minded gas consumers and producers to have more transparency, bring on more data. So really the task force will guide and will support that conversation forward together with our European partners, and really monitoring at any point how the market is evolving, how the gap is evolving, and bringing that conversation also across to other global fora such as the G7, G20, and the Pacific discussions. So here, as this is the global market, it's really a crucial point in time to look at the medium to longer term perspective, so that we look into 2023 really as a year of big change for the global market. So I will leave it to this for the introductory remarks, and looking very much forward to your questions and to the conversation. Thank you.
Many thanks to you, Silvia. It was perfect as a setting the scene. We were very happy to learn about this IEA Overlook. So I would now give the floor to Monica, who will take a slightly different perspective and will update us on the discussions happening at the European Commission level. Monica, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone who is listening to this panel discussion. Indeed, there have been already quite a few elements that were mentioned with regards to the impact that Russia's unprovoked and unjustified military aggression against Ukraine meant, not only for the European energy system, but in general on the global energy system. And I wouldn't focus, or wouldn't limit this impact only on the gas market. It had repercussions also on the oil and electricity markets in general. As a response to this, and this was already referred to also by Silvia, the EU's response was a strategic framework to rapidly reduce the dependence on Russian fossil fuels, and this was the main objective of the REPowerEU plan, with which we came out last year. But also this is accompanied or is complemented by the EU strategy for external energy engagement that was launched later in the year in May. The main elements of the REPowerEU plan try to marry an accelerated green transition or clean transition together with an improved energy security through the diversification of not only the gas supply sources, but the diversification of sources. All this also relates not only to gas, but again, it relates also to increased energy efficiency, as well as an accelerated implementation or rollout of renewable energy sources. So what have we done? What have we achieved since last year with the REPowerEU plan? Well, first of all, with the storage obligation that was very quickly in a record time agreed and adopted by the co-legislators at the beginning of 2022, it brought about a 90%, actually over 95% of storage filling by November last year. The original plan was just to reach 80%, but I think that was a very strong signal towards market players that storing gas would be one of the key elements that could get us through winter 22-23. Even today, storage filling levels are extremely high. As of yesterday, it was 58.9%, just to compare it to the average of the years before the war. At this time of the year, it was usually around 32%. So it's nearly double the amount, and this is extremely important when it comes to this year and next winter, and the preparedness for next winter. The other very important element was the gas demand reduction plan, which has yielded very important results. EU-wide, from August to January, while the target was around 15%, this target was surpassed, and it has reached 19.3%. This has also very significantly contributed to decreased demand, decreased needs for gas imports, as well as the ability to actually get whatever gas is imported into storage facilities. If we go to the next slide, please. We have also established the EU Energy Platform last year. The main objectives of the EU Energy Platform is focusing on the implementation of the REPowerEU plan through several activities. One of them is a very strong international outreach towards our suppliers other than Russia, but also, as was referred to actually by Sylvia, to the optimization of the existing infrastructure within the EU in order to make sure that the changing gas flows can be effectively supported by the existing infrastructure. Thanks to the international outreach, as was already mentioned, the most of the gas that was replacing missing Russian volumes came from LNG imports. There was a sharp increase from 2021, where the LNG imports reached 81 billion cubic meters. In 2022, it increased to 135 billion cubic meters. That's a good 60% year-on-year increase. Regarding other supplies, however, we also managed to get additional smaller amounts, increased amounts. For example, Norway supplied us with a record 90 BCM of gas in 22, and it has also committed to secure the same level in 2023. Algeria and Azerbaijan also maximized their exports to the EU with an increased imports from Algeria of reaching 36 billion cubic meters, and Azerbaijan through the Southern Gas Corridor, 11.5 BCM in 2022. Overall, in last year, the EU managed to compensate the more than 70 BCM of Russian gas with increased supplies from non-Russian sources. Just as a background, the Russian supplies in 21 reached 155 BCM, and overall during 22, this has decreased to 62 billion cubic meters. And if this trend continues, that in 23 we cannot expect more than 20 BCM of Russian gas imports reaching the EU. Some essential investments have also taken place. These are partly increasing LNG import capacity in the EU, but also in some way addressing some of the internal congestion that we have. There is a relatively strong congestion between Western Europe on the border of Belgium, France, and the Netherlands towards Germany, and by the new FSRUs that are being and will be still implemented on the shores, especially in Germany, but also in the Baltic region as well as around Greece. Those will be able to also go around these congestion points. All in all, in 22, the EU has completed additional 20 BCM of gas regasification capacity, and in 23 we expect further around 50 BCM of capacity. In terms of how that relates to the decarbonization, long-term decarbonization objectives, many or most of these increased capacities, they are coming from FSRUs, so floating storage and regasification units, which as soon as they are not needed, they can be actually shipped somewhere else, and with that we can minimize the stranded assets that usually investments in gas infrastructure would mean. If we go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, it's not only diversification of gas that we have been aiming at, but also the accelerated rollout of renewable energy. One of the emergency measures actually brought forward. One of the measures that accelerate the permitting processes for renewable generation, and that has been quite helpful. And we expect that in the coming years it will actually bring forward some of the capacities for renewables. The targets for 2030 have been proposed to be increased to 45%. And in 22, that was mentioned by Sylvia as well, around 41 gigawatts of renewable capacity, or only solar have been installed. This is 47% more than in the year 21, and this marked a record amount of installations. The market estimations for solar industry forecast a significant growth in installations also in the coming years, around 50 gigawatts this year, as well as 85 gigawatts towards 2026. And now if we go to the next slide, what our expectations are. So according to the Commission's assessment, the EU's supply outlook for this year has improved quite significantly. This is also thanks to the extremely high gas storage filling levels. But we do accept that it remains challenging because there is uncertainty about some of the external factors. Of course, China's demand is one of them. The weather is always something that has an impact. However, if we look at the other measures that we have introduced for the year 22, we have analyzed the impact of continuing with the demand reduction measures, and in case this 15% or even higher can be maintained during 2023, then the potential shortage of gas supplies will not happen for 2023 for the winter. So the combination of demand reduction, and just as an information, the demand for gas in 22 compared to 21 has decreased from around 380 BCM to 330. Therefore, the demand reduction efforts, they do have a significant impact. And then there is less gas that will need to be purchased during the year in order to be prepared for next year. So this is a bit more nuanced picture than what the IEA has, but these kind of different views and different assessments are the ones that make a discussion interesting. So I'm looking forward to further discussions on the topic. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to you, Monica. It was very interesting. And as I said, now the moderation goes to Alberto for the second part and the panel debate. Thanks.
Thank you, Ilaria. Thank you, Sylvia and Monica, for very inspiring opening presentation. Now we also have an all-female panel, and we have, after the International Outlook from Sylvia, the International Energy Agency, and Monica from the European Commission, now we have the sort of perspective from the three sides of the gas sector, from the companies, the gas companies. And here we have Eva Henning, the chair of Eurogas Distribution Committee at Eurogas. Then we look at infrastructure. We heard from both Sylvia and Monica that infrastructure play a major role. And we have Bojana Chosky, Secretary General of GIE, Gas Infrastructure Europe, and then obviously the regulators with Annegret Goebel, the president of CR, the Council of European Energy Regulators. As in the usual format, I would ask the three panelists, Eva, Bojana, and Annegret, for an initial statement of around 5 to 6 minutes. Then we'll run the polls, and then we will ask them to comment the polls, and we will also take some questions if we have time. Those participants who would like to ask questions to Sylvia, Monica, but also to the panelists, please put them in the Q&A facility. Please don't use the chat. We would like to keep one debate only and not two parallel debates. So without further ado, I think I can now give the screen to Eva for her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Alberto, and hello to everybody. It's great to have an all-female panel today. That's really, thank you for putting this together. Yes, if you could go to the first slide, please. That's the second one, the one up. Yeah, thank you. So I'm not only the chair of the distribution committee, but also have a real life. I'm working for TÜGA in Germany, which is 100 utility companies of all sizes. And I would like to start where we are between the winters, because we now had one winter behind us and we're preparing for the next one. And so what we have experienced is probably very similar to what all the other ones are also experiencing. So first of all, we had to reorganize ourselves because we had to be very, very fast and delivering numbers to make sure that we understand the flows. We had to cooperate closely with other DSOs, but especially also with the TSOs, because the TSO doesn't know what's happening with the flows if he doesn't get the numbers. So this was all happening last summer already. We had to deal with a gigantic amount of IT data to implement the different price caps. This is something that you just don't clap your hands and it happens. You have to prepare this. What we did is, and I think there we also have a nuanced picture on how much gas did we not use. So we had to learn a lot about our industrial customers, what they are doing with the gas. Some of them jumped to oil, some of them jumped to LPG if they were still able. Some of them shut down. Maybe they're going to come back. So not everything that we have reduced is long-term reduction. Some of it will also come back. We have, of course, seen that we lowered the temperature in the pools, we lowered the temperature in the district heating systems, and so on. So there was a lot of measures to reduce the energy amount. And we will see how long our citizens will not come back to us and say, well, I would like to have a warm swimming pool again, because not for everybody the war is still at the forehead, and we are still doing all those kind of things. We were really afraid of the electric heaters because everybody had one. We were afraid that on Christmas everybody would plug them in. So infrastructure is one of the big topics, and we saw a lot of customers connect to the district heating. But what we also saw was a strong push, and I'm speaking here for the distribution level, a strong push to think about decarbonization. So hydrogen readiness is not anymore just some crazy niche idea of some companies. Getting hydrogen ready and having the flexibility in the future is getting one of the very big issues. But before I start with hydrogen, I would like to say something on biomethane, because biomethane, this is one of the measures to reduce import amounts. We were very happy with the announcement of the Commission of the 35 BCM, because it was the first time that we had an ambitious target on the table. And when you see this France, I have a reason why I don't put Germany here, because I think that the French story on biomethane is so much better than the German ones, because in Germany we've been moving sideways, but there's no real development in the past years. In France, you can see this very, very strong growth of connection of biomethane plants, of the injection, and also of the planning. And when you ask me why, it's very easy, because there is a state which is behind that. So if you don't have the support of your ministry, if you don't have the support which tells you, well, there is a future for you. In Germany, we started off with a lot of biogas plants, but most of them were only producing electricity, and they were mostly producing the biogas from energy crops. France didn't go down that path, because France also has a different waste, let's say, waste industry. So in France, from the beginning, it was on residues, it was on agricultural residues, and this is why I think this is very much forward thinking. And so you can see what can happen if you have a member state going ahead with this. We see a very similar development in Denmark. Denmark already will have 30% of biomethane in the grid. We see in all countries now, so around Europe, we can see that even in those countries which don't have biomethane plants connected, they start with this. They do studies, so everybody is trying to do the best. And I think what we will see now is that we have more and more biomethane plants who want to be connected to the grid, also in Germany. So finally in Germany, after a long dried out time, we see more and more people who want to connect to the grid. The second slide is on the hydrogen. So this was all running parallel last year. I would say that this was the busiest year in regards of biomethane and hydrogen, at least in my 33 years. So what happened was that, well, when the gas package came out, of course, the DSOs were totally unhappy with it because the DSOs are just not, we didn't see ourselves in there. We were supposed to ownership unbundle. We had to sell the first meter of hydrogen after the first moment. So what this did was that the DSOs got together and said, well, we have to act together and we have to work together to make sure that we do the best. If somebody learns something, that everybody is learning from them. This is why we created Ready for H2. This is now a bit more than half a year. It's not so old, but it was an initiative. It's not an association. It's an initiative where we collect all the DSOs across Europe, and this is extended Europe. This is going to the Ukraine. Turkey is included. Even Israel is included. What we do is, what you can see on the right side, we have roadmaps. So everybody has to work on the roadmap. We are very far advanced in Germany. We are much more advanced because we started earlier. So in Germany, we already did this now last year with 180 DSOs, which is quite a lot out of the 600 that we have. This year, we're going to plan to have 380 of them included. And we really went into a detailed planning on how to get hydrogen ready. Why do we do this? Because we think that we will need it and we can already see it. I can feel it. I can feel it every day because we have industrial consumers coming up and saying, so tell us, when are you there? When do you deliver the hydrogen to us? And is it going to be pure hydrogen or is it going to be a blend? We have electrolyzers who want to connect. We have pyrolysis plants who want to connect. We even had an electrolyzer in the middle of the city and the top of a supermarket who wanted to connect. So if you want to have this flexibility in the grids, we really have to be technically ready. And last point, this is also working towards heating and cooling roadmaps. You know that in the parliament, in the gas directive, Jens Geier, and so the shadows and the rapporteur have included the heating and cooling roadmaps. And we are convinced, not only as Tüger, but also as the other companies, we are convinced that the heating and cooling roadmaps are the only way to go forward because you have to do this locally. Top down does not help you if you have to deliver energy at the local level. Bottom up, that's proven by Fraunhofer with a very detailed study. You have to do this bottom up because only then you know what you have as energy, you know what the need is, you know what kind of infrastructures you have, and you also know how much money you have. So we think that this movement towards the heating and cooling roadmaps, which then tell you district heating, electricity or gas or hydrogen is the right way forward. And so this was the big push in the last year, which is now continuing. I'd like to stop here.
Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you for bringing into the picture renewable gases and hydrogen. Maybe they won't help us massively in the next few months, but clearly they're part of the picture of a longer-term decarbonization path. So after that, I would now pass the screen to Bojana, the Secretary General of Gas Infrastructure Europe, to provide the infrastructure perspective. It's been, I guess it has been a challenging winter for infrastructure operators, and you're still looking ahead to some challenges, right?
Indeed, thank you, Alberto, and thank you for the invitation towards Gas Infrastructure Europe and myself. Happy International Day to all the people that are following this debate today, and also to the female speakers. A very interesting idea indeed to provide a perspective of what is happening last year or this year and what is going to happen next year, only by female speakers today from the industry, because it also showcases a good signal that we are also part of this industry and working hardly on solving, let's say, the crisis that occurred last year. It's been indeed a very challenging year, but I think the infrastructure proved very well our role within the security of supply perspective, and I think everything was done very, very well. A lot was said actually from the previous speakers, and namely the European Commission. Monica already mentioned a lot of things that were done within the crisis when it started, and a lot of initiatives when we actually were supposed to follow. So our members for the moment are handling 25% of Europeans' primary energy consumption from the infrastructure that we are operating. We represent the LNG facilities, the underground storage, transmission systems. Basically, for the moment, we transport almost 4,000 kilowatt hours. We store a lot of energy, so 1,000 kilowatt hours, and we import 2,000 kilowatt hours. So the role that we're seeing here is going to evolve. On one perspective, of course, security of supply, it's a very important element, but in the future will help also to decarbonize the part of the energy system which cannot be electrified. So as we understood, the growing demand for renewable and low carbon gases, it's important and means that Europe will need to import or to transport, to store, to export large volumes of gases in different forms. Within and outside Europe. So our infrastructure operators, we see that will happen in 3 different stages. Of course, in short term, which was established in the previous years, but also the medium and the long term are very important perspectives. So basically, we need to start, and indeed that was discussed already and mentioned on finding a very proper alternative for gas resources. That, of course, could be done by the LNG imports from Qatar, from US, and the terminal operators that we are having are already working on increasing their import capacity. We also can increase the domestic production within Europe, which could be a very good solution on the short term. The other element, which is very important, is we need to have enough gas stock and to secure the routes to fill them within the gas storages when it's needed. And in this regard, we've proven very good on the percentages that was requested by the European Commission within the regulation for storages. And basically the 90% that we managed to reach a little bit ahead of time of November. So the gas infrastructure operators really need to have a proper investment to change the flow patterns that we have. The system is working, the gas flows from one direction, east side to western. And this is something that is traditional import. And basically, this is something that we need to very properly invest to change this transport routes. In the medium term, what is important and what I would like to emphasize, midterm, we talk about 2023, 2025. Basically, once we start benefiting from these additional gases, we also need to make sure that we need to amend the existing built additional gas infrastructure that it's also on the same time as it's providing security of supplies, it's really ready to be able to decarbonize the system. Because this is the way that we can reach a very climate neutral and well interconnected market indeed. We need to also make sure that there are no let's say, unneeded investments in the system, and we will not, let's say, one day waking up with too many infrastructure that is not going to be needed. So the main problem indeed is today the way that it's structured, that the gas flows east to west, so Norwegian deliverables, LNG are coming on land in this regards to solve that is going to be a possibility to solve the issue. But in the south, North African gas comes in, and this is actually the possibility where you have a lot of LNG terminals that are situated in the Iberian Peninsula. But in the middle of Europe, there is one where you have, let's say, the bottlenecks. And the bottlenecks is something that is very important to be solved. The landlocked countries, generally, there's ones who cannot actually benefit from LNG. And this is something that we need to somehow solve with sufficient connections to LNG parts to replace the pipeline supplies. Indeed, on the other hand, of course, in the midterm, we need to very much make sure that we accelerate properly the decarbonization with biomethane, which was also mentioned, and of course the hydrogen production, because the massive ramp up of biogas means also a need, let's say, on very substantial investments. And substantial investments also needs to have a very long-term perspective. So this is a message, of course, to the policymakers that needs to leave a room and also on a long term for biomethane and also hence methane infrastructure to prove and to work well in this regard. We also launched together with Eurogas this hydrogen infrastructure map, which is very good, interactive and user-friendly tool, which we showcase all, let's say, feasible projects for the moment for hydrogen, because actually we are also supporting in the midterm the European hydrogen backbone, and we very much hope that this is going to come true. In the future, it's very important to structure and to secure the LNG for Europe, because this is the time that the new plant LNG terminals will be online. So basically, we need to secure new LNG for Europe. And again, that's also considered that we need to have a good cooperation with neighboring countries on the potential patterns around the possibilities on board on early stage on the uptake of hydrogen. Of course, the way that we are going to decarbonize the LNG terminals, it's also important point here that we are working very much on that. About the data, Monica already shared a lot of data. We are very much committed to support with our data expertise, with the two platforms that we are having here, which actually was very much used this year on, let's say, all the information that we provide on the level of storages and also the imports and exports on LNG terminals, AXI and ALTI. So for the moment, what we did this year, some key elements on LNG, you know that there are new 2 LNG terminals, FSRUs in operation, which are from this year. So Wilshaven in the Netherlands and IEA Energy. So basically, there is a change on the situation in Europe in this regard. So for the moment, we have operational 22 terminals, and under construction for the moment is 1, and the plant is, we have 4 terminals, which are expected to be delivered. The FSRU and the others, we have 12, which are planned, because indeed a lot of interest on investments in FSRUs. In this, the crisis proved really the very important role of the FSRUs. Under construction, there are 7 terminals. That makes in total the onshore and FSRUs and others is like 32, which we have operational for the moment. We have under construction 8 and also planned 16, which is quite a lot. LNG imports increased by 60% actually in 2022, but this is a figure that still cannot really complete and compensate, let's say, to all required quantities. We're working a lot on that. To pass the winter, increased LNG capacity has to really go along with the consumption reduction measures and also the important role in filling of the gas storages. So for the gas storages, indeed, the gas storage sites are now full by almost 60%, 58 as Monica mentioned, putting this is actually 20% above their 5-year average between 2018 and 2022. This is really temporary relief, but it should not very much lead to too early optimistic conclusions. There is something that has to take into consideration because the late cold spells could still occur in March. There is such kind of example in 2018 with the cold spells. And the process of filling the European storages over the summer 2022, actually what happened is that we benefited from 2 factors that might not be repeated, let's say, this year. One of them, of course, is the fact that the Russian gas deliverables to Europe via pipelines at close to normal levels was still there in the first half in 2022, before, of course, to drastically decrease in the second half. And the fact that I think that was also mentioned, lower LNG imports by China were, of course, due to the economic shutdown and the zero COVID policy. So basically, there are 2 elements that we don't know if that will happen next year. So we hope, and this is our message, that the storage level should not be very much, let's say, emptied this winter, to make sure that we'll have a good, and because in any case, the test of all the efforts that we did together is going to be proven next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bojana. Thank you for the perspective from the infrastructure operators. Indeed, the storage level seems to be quite high at the moment, as it was said beforehand. So hopefully this is going to stay the same until the end of the winter.
We hope so.
Yeah, well, it's only, what, 2 weeks after the end of the meteorological winter. Now we go to the regulators. Annegret, good afternoon to you as well. How are the regulators looking at the current winter? Is it snowing in Bonn, by the way? No.
Yeah, unusually for Bonn, it is indeed today snowing, but it's not so cold.
Okay, so how are the regulators looking at this, period between the two critical winters?
Two critical winters. Yes, thank you, and thank you for the good idea to have this debate here today with an all-female panel and a lot of very good speeches already. So I try to bring in a little bit of the perspective of the regulators, and I think I can, let's say, I will call it the 5S, and I will explain what this means. So that I'll name them, and then I go in a little bit into depth. The storage, the solidarity, the saving, a soft winter, and finally speeding up the energy transition. I think all of these were already mentioned by the other speakers, and of course it is not always clean cut. They overlap each other. On the other side, what I want to say is that the effect that we have now, that we more or less went through the winter without all the horror scenarios coming, or worst case scenarios coming true, like a curtailing of gas shortage, etc., that we prepared for in a crisis team, for example, here at BNetzA as well, is due to two things. One is these cumulative effort that I just named with these 5S, plus also that these additional emergency measures complement the framework in which we are working as regulators, and which proved to be robust. This is, of course, for the gas market, the internal energy market, the third internal energy market package, and of course for the electricity side, we have the clean energy package. So this has proved the instruments that we have there, and the market in particular have proven to work well, to be robust. Yes, of course, the prices have increased because there was scarcity due to the effect that the Russian gas flows stopped. So I think as an economist, this is predictable in a way. Of course, there was a higher amount of uncertainty, so the volatility increased. Again, this is something which is predictable. But overall, with the additional measures, the overall environment proved, I think, to be robust, and probably more robust than some thought it would be. So that Europe came all in all through the crisis better than may have been expected. Now let me add to these a little bit some remarks on the emergency measures. Of course, the storage regulation, I mean, we have mentioned this now several times, and I can confirm, for example, in Germany, indeed, right now at this moment in time, the level of storage is nearly twice what it is normally on average in the previous years, and on average. So clearly, like on the European picture as a whole, there is a benefit from this storage and from the storage regulation and the obligatory filling requirement. And I think this is also very important to answer the second question of the panel on whether what do we face, how difficult will be the next winter. I think, yes, it has been said, and the price clearly remains higher because it is more difficult to replace a high share of Russian gas. but we are starting from a higher level with these gas storages filled in. So it will not be the full effect that we had, the full price increase effect that we had seen last year, but much more moderate. So this is also a benefit of this storage regulation, that it didn't bring only the Europe through this winter, but that it also will help to bring us through the next winter. The next point was solidarity, and this has two dimensions, I would say. One is, of course, the solidarity, which is also included in the storage regulation and the gas reduction regulation among member states. Yeah? So that there is, based on the SOS regulation and the update of the SOS regulation, that there is an obligation to help each other coming from gas in the storage, in the different storage. So important element, additional element to have this solidarity obligation, I would say, which proves that, and which of course also again sits and is embedded or sits on top of a functioning market. This would not work without infrastructure. I very much agree with this, and I come back to this in a moment. Plus the functioning of the market with all the market rules, network codes, etc., etc. So to enable the solidarity, which is now a requirement of the regulation. Next part is, let's say, the other market side, that is demand, so the saving, and that is on the one side the reduction target, of course, and as well as having a more energy efficient approach. So also this is a requirement now, the energy efficiency principle, energy efficiency first principle, and all the work that is currently being done to amend and renew the energy efficiency directive, which I would put into this box, so to speak, and of course. This the saving as such, so reducing the actual demand. So again, this will help to have a trajectory that works well for the next winter, so that we start on a lower level coming from the demand side. And of course, all this would not have been, let's say, so easy had it not been such a mild and soft winter. That's clear. So now, of course, the next step, and we have heard this also already about the renewables, that the gas is not only replaced by LNG or other gas from other sources, but indeed that we speed up the energy transition and have a real full switch away from fossil fuels, and that does not mean only from Russian gas or gas in general, but from all fossil fuels towards renewables. And I was very much impressed with what Sylvia said at the beginning. I think it was 40% increase of renewables that replace and take the place of gas. And I think this is the, let's say, the way forward. And in this sense, even so, I now try to word it very cautiously and very carefully, that this is a chance also of the situation that we have, because I would say that we would never have had this speeding up of the energy transition, all the measures that are now being discussed on the permitting, on the solidarity regulation with speeding up permitting of renewables and others. I think that is an extremely important element, that we're not only now in the phase of, let's say, repairing something or of reacting to an emergency, but that we now take this this moment, this momentum, to have the structural measure and the structural change, and go to renewables and a net zero or carbon free energy system, as well, of course, as an economic system, so that we replace and that we come out of the crisis mode and go to the more structural mode, to taking the chance of the energy, let's say, the energy transition mode. And here, of course, one of the most important things is, of course, that the gas decarbonization package is approved, hopefully still this year. In any case, hopefully still in this legislative period, to reduce the uncertainty and to also reap the benefits from the gas decarbonization package. In particular, of course, moving towards a hydrogen economy and replacing here also the old fossil fuel gas. For the infrastructure needs that are there, I think we were now seeing already at the PCI list, which is currently put together, that the 10E regulation, that is also a piece of in the whole picture, the new 10E regulation already works in the direction of greening the new infrastructure investment and helping also to finance it. So I think that is something which is also an element that contributes to this change, to this more long-term change, bringing Europe to be a net zero and a carbon-free, climate-neutral continent. So summing up, basically, I think it is important to keep also in the gas decarbonization package the core of the internal energy market, which enables us, together with the complementary measures that were taken, to come out now of the emergency mode towards the energy transition mode. So that would be my take as regulators, and we are, of course, in the core trying to implement the market rules as best as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Annegret. Never waste a good crisis, right? That's.
Yeah. I said it more cautiously.
But that's basically
right.
one of your messages, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much for your sort of initial thoughts. And now I turn the screen back to Ilaria to run the pause. And again, if the participants want to ask questions, please use the Q&A facility.
Yeah, they're a bit shy today, indeed. But thank you very much, Alberto. Yes, it's time now for a couple of polls that we have prepared. We would like to hear more, encourage our participants to have a statement, to interact more directly. So we have prepared two polls. The first one, actually, I think builds very nicely on the latest intervention from Annegret. So if we can put the poll up, thank you very much. So we'd like to know, given the policies and measures put in place to replace Russian gas, how long do you expect the EU having to deviate from the decarbonization path expected before the Russian invasion of Ukraine? So how does this influence actually the decarbonization path that Europe had initiated? Do you think 1 year will be enough? Do you think it will take 2 to 3 years to get back on track? 5? More than 5? Or you're not really sure? So please vote.
And unfortunately, the panelists and the speakers don't have the opportunity to vote.
No. But we more or less sensed. Okay, let's give a couple of seconds. Okay, let's see. Okay, so 2 to 3 years is the majority, what the majority thinks. So a little bit of deviation, but easy to get back on track in a couple of years. Very good. Then also, there are only, I think, few people who think this will deviate for more than 5 years. Okay, great. So let's go to the next one, please. Next poll. This is a little bit longer, but it builds on a speech in November, December by the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She listed a number of instruments who could help deliver a safe winter. And we would like you to choose 3. Which ones you think are the 3 most important, most effective to deliver a safe winter? Diversification, energy savings, boosting renewables, speeding up permitting processes for renewables, storage obligation, solidarity, this joint platform for the purchase of gas, improving infrastructure, introducing a legal framework that enables member states to skim off the windfall profits of energy producing companies, or refining the market correction mechanism, the so-called price cap. The three most important ones, according to you. Again, I see our speakers eager to vote, but they cannot. But we'll hear from them in the debate. So, of course, you have multiple choice here. You can select more than once. It's enabled, and when we are ready, we can see the results. Let's see. A little bit of suspense.
Winner is.
Daniela is calculating by hand, apparently. Is making the calculation.
Can we win something? 10,000 euros?
Well, you can guess. You can bet.
500 kilowatt hours of hydrogen.
Okay, let's. I think there is a little glitch, technical glitch. Perhaps we will have to repeat. I don't know. Daniela, give us a sign.
Yes, sure.
So, yes, exactly. I'm trying. Maybe we'll have to repeat, but I will need some minutes.
Okay. But then we can perhaps start with comments on the first one, no? On the first poll.
Exactly. And I would intend to go in the same order as we had now, and maybe last round we go in the reverse order. But I would really like you to stay within a minute or so that we can have probably a couple of rounds and also some sort of get some questions from the audience. So I would start with Silvia.
Thanks very much. So this is an interesting one in terms of, is the problem that we are addressing something that is short-term, medium-term? For what we do at the IEA, we usually have a kind of 2025 outlook anyway. So on the gas market side, to see anything changing really, we do have the medium-term perspective, particularly because, well, first of all, the rearrangement of the global gas market in terms of having that Russian volumes replaced is not something that happens within a year, and I think everybody is aware of that fundamental. At the same time, if we really see the pressure that it puts on the global LNG market, if such a big volume needs to be replaced quickly, we can't afford it. Nobody can, price-wise, consumption-wise, industrial demand-wise. So there are a number of really positive wildcards we had because the weather was good, because industrial gas demand was shut in, as many speakers said, from the work on the ground. But clearly, and not having China on with COVID restrictions, but clearly that will not be the same every year and cannot be the same every year, hopefully not. So we cannot have that price spike. But we do believe that as the global demand supply balance is a fragile one, that some of those things will not be done overnight. And clearly, if we really look at just the normal trends in the LNG market, we see that there has always been and was anticipated that crunch time where at the moment there's just no new liquefaction capacity coming because, and there's another problem here, just markets around the world are wondering what's the role of gas, and particularly in the growing economies in Asia. So that is actually what will drive the conversation. Unfortunately, we haven't had it on the agenda of today's meeting, but that will be the main issue around 2024, 2025. How much gas will Asia need? And there, the outlook is huge between LNG demand being very high, kind of reminds us of our own scenarios when we looked a few, maybe 5-6 years back, to how European gas demand could look like when we had these sort of, very wide gaps between very optimistic, very high increase to very much downward trend. So I think the European transition will be faster, and we've done a lot of things here. And I think as Annegret said, I agree that there is a structural change happening.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question from our colleague Sergio. The 40% increase renewables that you mentioned, is that capacity output or?
Yes, so it's a good question. In fact, what happens it's the additional capacity that was put on. We have a renewable forecast where we look at the new capacity that comes in. That doesn't mean generation. I would wish so, but not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet there.
Thank you very much. Monica.
Alberto, sorry, meanwhile, we have the results of the second poll.
So right.
We can
so the winner
show them now.
The winner is? Oh, everything, almost.
Diverse views.
Yes. Okay. Maybe we can leave it up for a moment while we sort of go through the comments, and I will now pass on to Monica. And Monica, while you're commenting on these results, there is also another question of whether the European Commission is looking at increasing the target for demand reduction about 15%, as we had this year. So, Monica, what do you take of the results of the two polls now that we have
two polls? Yeah. Well, on the first poll, I read an economist article about the crisis having practically helped Europe jump a good 5-10 years ahead on the decarbonization pathway, rather than deviating from it. And actually the increased renewables rollout, energy efficiency, not just energy savings, but energy efficiency investments, some technological adaptations in industry, those are structural changes that already impact on the longer term where Europe is heading in terms of its energy mix. Of course, at the same time, there was some demand reduction by moving some industry out of the EU. But I think as opposed to deviate, I think we have actually accelerated that decarbonization pathway for Europe. So this is on poll one. And of course, I see Sylvia nodding, so I'm glad. But of course, we can argue about that. When it comes to the second poll, when I wanted to click on buttons, so as Ilaria was saying, and my take or my approach to what are the best ways of improving the security of supplies resilience is doing things over which we have control. So we can't control production, especially not in the short term. We cannot make countries suddenly start producing more, because that's not something we have control over, and it's quite impossible. So the points about diversifying, and then I'm talking about diversifying energy sources, so not just gas suppliers, saving energy efficiency investments, rolling out of renewables, which are on territory which is Europe. I think those are the things that can substantially help in terms of improving our security of supply. So the overall poll result is something that I would have actually clicked on or chosen.
Good. Eva, thank you. Sorry, Monica, thank you very much. And Eva, next to you. How do you take?
First poll, I would have clicked on 2 to 3 years, but for two different reasons. So the first one is the increase in coal, the usage of coal, which means that it's going backwards, which has several reasons. It was not only because of gas, also because of the crisis of the nuclear power plants in France. So I think it's a mixed picture. But what I also can see is that we have a very, very large increase, and this happened in the moment after the war came. you could see that a lot of money was floating into the market of hydrogen. It was like, boom. When you see how much money is going into research, and I'm not talking about research in the labs, the frequency of something is invented, going into a laboratory, going into a technicum, going into a production site is now shortened because there's so much venture capital out there. That's something we can see in Israel and Austria. Australia, we see electrolyzers with 96% energy efficiency of what we would have dreamed of a couple of years ago. So the whole market is moving very fast. And I think this will speed up the decarbonization process. Of course, it takes time. This is why I think in 2 to 3 years we might be on track again, but we see a totally different development to what we have thought before. And this is why we had always been saying, let's be open, because you don't know how things can change. The second point, the second poll, I would have voted a little bit differently, because what I can see, unfortunately, is that energy efficiency is just going very, very slow. This is why if we think about the next winter, so what can we bring very fast? I also think it has to be something that we can influence. This is why we have to be faster in building renewable plants. We can see as TÜGA how long it takes us to get one windmill built or PV farm, to get them connected to the electricity grid, to have enough electricity grid there to bring the electricity somewhere. And then suddenly we have the electricity, but we don't have enough usage for it, because in the summertime, nobody's using the electricity. So we have to be more intelligent to use those installations with a higher load factor to make them, to really make the most out of the electricity which is produced there. And this is why I think this is something we can influence. It's our doing. We don't have to look to any other country.
Thank you very much, Eva. Bojana, your take.
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting exercise. Thank you for that. I would vote 2 to 3 years. Actually, I voted without to know that it's not for us, but only to this first question. That's actually the time when the new LNG terminal capacity are coming online, and then the EU can really contribute to the switch from coal to gas, probably not on a very affordable cost, but indeed this capacity are coming online, the new plant LNG terminal capacities, and then let's take a little bit of a concrete example why we're thinking that this should be 2 to 3 years. Basically talking about the gas storage regulation, which actually obliged the member states to take all the necessary measures to ensure the continuous operation of the storages facilities on their territories, right? And since the most of the regulation has a sunset clause of the time of December 2025, this really can make gas to hydrogen storage conversions being challenging before this date, let's say. So I think we should avoid going beyond 2 to 3 years of delay for reputational effects. So the gas industry claiming that the energy transition is now broken. So that would be my preferred option. On the poll too, there are a couple of things which I am having as a preference. For sure, diversity, having a diversity of the energy supplies. This is something that, of course, it's very proven as important element of having different suppliers and not to rely on one only. Saving energy is something that actually have a lot of important role to play on the whole situation that we are finding ourselves. Speeding up the permitting process for renewables, putting a place in a minimum gas storage obligation, and as I mentioned, improving the infrastructure. So definitely solving the bottlenecks issues in relation to what is needed of the infrastructure to deliver properly.
Thank you very much, Bojana. And Annegret, well, maybe one thing that I would add to your possibility of comments is apparently no one has looked, I mean, hey, very few have actually looking at the choosing as measures, I mean, the platform. Do you have any view on that? I mean, but in more generally, what's your take?
Yeah, I'll try also to answer to this one. So the first one, I agree with what was said about whether we're really deviating or are behind the schedule. Also, what I said before, I think it is probably jumping ahead if we keep now, if we switch to the structural component and get ready with the gas decarbonization package and keep this momentum, as I said, then it would not be a delay. And this, of course, also relates to question 2, using or boosting renewables by speeding up the permitting process. I think these two go together, and this then means a clear move towards decarbonization, including, of course, green gases, hydrogen, etc., etc. So I think that can indeed, if there is a deviation, if there is a fallback, because some, for example, in Germany, we had to use more coal power plants, etc. But if there is a delay, I think there might be a good chance, if the measures are now put in place and implemented speedily, that this delay is catched up. If not even we are jumping ahead. I think the point made by Eva is important, that to speed up the permitting processes, but I also think that this is underway with now on the European level making in the solidarity regulation, having this overriding public interest for the permitting, to speed up the permitting, and we have there's legislation prepared in the German Bundestag that goes in the same direction, to have an overriding public interest to speed this process up. So I think this is now on the mind of everyone, so to speed this up. The other thing is, of course, because it's maybe the cheapest, if it is implemented, it may take longer, is the question of energy saving, energy efficiency. And here again, it is also important to complement and approve and adopt the energy efficiency, the new energy efficiency directive, plus, as said before, the renewable directives. Now coming to the platform idea, I mean, this is currently being also implemented. Yeah, there are the delegated acts now, etc. I think in theory it is a very, very good idea. I don't know whether it will fly, because it's a mixture of voluntary participation plus a sort of pre-obligation on the national level. And so whether this really is working afterwards in the practice to fulfill the purpose, as a personal view, purely personal view, I have my doubts. And I think final point on this, and maybe this is why not many people have chosen this or in the poll, because it's unclear how it will be put in practice and how it will be put in place. A last point, one can say, of course, that the filling of the storage or individual by member states contributed to higher prices. However, I think whether this problem is really solved and addressed with the platform, again, I think there are some question marks here. Of course, the idea in principle is that there would be more purchasing power if you do it jointly as the whole EU via the platform. Can contribute to having a better balance with big producer countries from other sources, but this has to work out, and I mean, remembering because the idea behind it is the same, the joint purchasing of vaccination was of course a very important step to overcome the pandemic. But the prices were also quite high, as we now know. Yeah, so the purchasing power, let's say, it works only if the purchasing power, the increased purchasing power via the platform, can actually be leveraged and can actually be used. And I'm not sure that this will be easily implementable in practice.
Thank you very much, Annegret. Ilaria, do you want to add anything to in reaction of the polls, because we are getting close to the
yes
end.
Well, I think we heard very many interesting inputs to the debate. I would tend to agree with Annegret that, and I would have underlined that, in fact, what we ask is the three most important instruments out of that big list. So obviously, we know that there are the more popular ones, like reducing demand, obviously, diversification, obviously. So then you have a third place, and yeah, it's less likely to choose the joint purchasing platform, particularly if it's not, as you said, very clear how it is going to work. But this doesn't mean that it's a negative judgment overall. So I think all the instruments actually listed there in by the Commissioner the President von der Leyen were actually all good. And again, it's always a matter also of external circumstances on which to insist first, to which give more relevance. But I think, as a quick conclusion, if I may, Alberto, I think we can say that we can be reasonably optimistic. We are almost safe. The past winter seems over. But I think we also heard important warnings. I think we learned that there are some variables that we really need to keep an eye on. First of all, the demand from China, whether it will restart significantly or not. The level of storages, of course, and here I had a question for Bojana. We don't have the time, but I would be interested also in understanding the value of the upcoming summer, because storages might also, we might have a very dry summer, and then this would have an impact, of course, also on the storage. I think the general message is that we would like to see a more structural change in the demand reduction that we've seen. Was a very good thing, but the word structural change, I think, was really the key word for this debate. So that what we have seen in terms of demand reduction is not something temporary, and it's not something linked to some extent lucky circumstances like the mild weather, but also that this demand can actually be reduced thanks to more renewable energy and more investments in renewable energy, which will lead to the desired results in terms of decarbonization. This is like my 5 cents. I don't know, Bojana, if you have a quick response to my question on the storages of summer during the summer. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Ilaria. So I was actually trying to find where I can put this on the chat, but as you're answering, as I can answer. So actually, the spring is approaching, and this is the start of the following storage year. So what we can recommend, for example, is to limit the number of the intermediate filling targets that could give a possibility to have more flexibility to the customers. What we think is that a favor market-based instruments are needed really to support the bookings for storage. And then another element could be that the back supply for protected customers is something that is good for the storage bookings. And the last element, which is important for the storage year ahead, is that we should ensure that the tender procedure by public institutions really starts as early as possible and in a very coordinated way to avoid really the market distortion.
Thank you very much, Bojana. I think now we are at the end of this debate. I would like to thank all the speakers, all the participants, and also for their questions. We were able to address some of them, not all of them, but thank you to the speaker. Thank you to Silvia, to Monica, to Eva, to Bojana, and to Annegret. And maybe one takeaway from me is, yes, indeed, it's the future is not yet sure, but we are starting with a better prospect than last year. Last year we were surprised by the perfect storm. Let's hope that this year there won't be. I mean, we have put in place measures, demand reduction. We have a market correction mechanisms. People again have been questioning how effective this would be, but hopefully we won't need it. And if we need it, we'll see whether it's how effective it is. So thanks a lot. It has been a very interesting debate. Ilaria and I will be again on show on the 5th of April, Wednesday, the Wednesday before Easter, and there we will be talking about the design of CFDs. It's now we're moving back to electricity, and CFDs have been discussed as one of the possible long-term instruments as part of the market design or reform market design, enhanced market design. We'll try to go a bit deeper. So those of you who are interested, save the date, Wednesday, the 5th of April, from 2 to 3:30 as of today. But again, thank you.
Sorry, I have a last announcement because today,
sure.
as we know, it's a very important day. And we also decided under our Lights on Women initiative of the Florence School of Regulation to extend the deadline for the Lights on Women scholarship, first of all, so time until 12th of March. And something very new, we open a call through our newly launched Energy Based, which, as you know, is our latest initiative to shed a light on the women that are experts in energy and sustainability and climate. So through the Energy Base, we want to award a special prize to emerging talents. So if you know any emerging talent, any female experts in this field who is working intensively at some project or has a startup, or there are all the requirements on the website, and you are very welcome to spread the word. And the ceremony will be in Florence on the 16th of May. So in the chat, I think Daniela has put the link to this. So if you are interested, please follow the link and read more. Thank you very much.
And
thanks
well, we couldn't have a better opportunity to announce this on
That's true.
on International Women's Day. So thanks a lot to everybody, and well, see you soon, if not before, on the 5th of April.